I'm Brent Choi. I'm the Chief Creative and Chief Exec at DDB Canada.
I guess my first question would be, how has digital work changed since the last time you judged work?
Wow, okay, you're not starting off easy. I mean, the whole world's changed in so many ways, and digital is becoming native to almost everything we do. So that in itself has been a big change, that everything's digital. I think the way from award show judging, and I noticed it just judging now, I'm a lot harder on true utility. I still, because it's an award show, I really look for creativity as well. But I'm no longer tricked. I should rephrase that. I really look hard at, is it something that's really creating an effect, or is it creatives just trying to do something creative? So it has to have that double benefit of it's creative, but also is something that was downloaded, it was used, it actually created some type of ripple effect in society that was meaningful, either for the brand or for actual consumers to use.
And when it comes to that digital work, do you find that it's harder to recognize a big idea in that space?
Um, I think some of the digital tactical stuff is definitely not as big, but there's definitely some big brand things that I've seen that feel big and meaningful. It seems harder to do that kind of stuff, and then when you add that layer of creativity, it often is some of those smaller things that are, location based or an interesting spin on a native platform, so they don't feel as big. But I think if it, still, if it's so creative or has such a meaningful effect, even on a niche audience, it gets the PR to have a bigger effect as well.
Do you have an example of a digital idea that feels really big? Like, would it be Whopper Detour?
Yeah, well, I mean, Whopper Detour, I wasn't in the US for it, so I don't know how many people actually used it, but of course the press of it was huge. I think if Go Back to Africa was really big and felt really big, so that's another one that I think was meaningful as well in society. Um, there's a couple from a couple of years ago that I think about from Mick Whopper was obviously massive. I also remember this game. I think it was called like Sequest or something. It was helping collect data for Alzheimer's. So that was in Europe somewhere, but that was there's some stat about they collected more data from that game than 80 years previous about Alzheimer's, because the way people engage with that. So there are things that were big and meaningful, some that were more PR driven big, and some that were just big in what it can do for society.
Cool.
Yeah.
One question that I'm very curious about is, considering this is a really international jury.
Yes.
I mean, all the categories are.
Yeah.
Is it hard to align on what's a good idea sometimes because of everyone's cultural backgrounds and how different everyone is?
I think the world is pretty globalized now, especially award shows, which is fair and unfair. Sometimes it's difficult to award very local insights because I'm just not aware of it. So it's up to the entry to make sure that the jury is aware of the local insight. So I would say it's easier to award a global insight or a global idea. But there are examples, I can't think of any, so don't ask me, of a local insight that really shows, great creativity in digital for something that I wouldn't understand as being from North America. Haven't seen that, but.
So I imagine the case study, it's probably better to set that up.
Absolutely, you have to. Yeah,
area.
if there's a local insight, you have to address that.
What else do I got?
You got your 2 minutes.
Let's flip it for fun. Let's flip it for fun.
We're gonna flip it.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay. Shit.
Okay, that's me.
Okay.
Oh, it's brighter on the side. I'm Jenny Luong, and I'm an ACD at DDB Chicago.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
So I'm always curious about people who cross borders.
Yes.
Or go.
Well, you did it yourself, so.
Yeah. So how do you feel about what you get briefed on and the type of work you have to do from John Street in Canada to DDB in Chicago?
Well,
remember to encapsulate the question and the answer.
Oh, see, that's really hard.
That was a tough question.
I know.
Okay. Well, the difference between working in Canada, Toronto, versus Chicago, DDB Chicago, is I find that everything's just bigger in the US. There's more money. And so that could be a good or bad thing. I think the good things about having more money is the briefs are so much more open. I don't think I've gotten a brief where there's actually a budget written on the page. Whereas in Canada, that's always one of the things that we ask at the end of the meeting or the briefing. So that's kind of good. The budgets are way bigger. The bad thing I would say is I find projects last a little longer. Like they kind of drag on a bit more. And I think it's because there's more rounds of feedback. There's more layers to kind of get through to sell an idea through. And then, yeah, I'd say the briefs are better in the sense that it's just more impactful stuff. Right now, DDB Chicago has a lot of brand act briefs, which is pretty cool. Like, I've never really been able to think that way at John Street because there just wasn't budget for that. It was always work on stuff for a TV campaign or, very kind of set medias. So I think that's the major difference is more money and bigger, more people, longer timelines.
Do you find in the US you're working more in specific mediums and with partner agencies or experts?
I find that working in the US, it's not necessarily about splitting roles across partner agencies. I think we all kind of think similarly and like we're thinking experiential, we're thinking about stunts and all that kind of stuff as well. The thing that I find is what feels more siloed is the brands that you work on. So I find that a lot of creatives are dedicated to a specific brand. I have a special, I guess, position right now. I work in the creative pool. That's what they call it at DDB Chicago, which means I get to touch on all the brands. And because I get to do that, I get to work on like everything from TV to social to experiential to, stunts or, all the non-traditional stuff is totally up for grabs.